Birds have always been associated with natural selection. Ever since Darwin looked at the finches of the Galapagos Islands and understood how natural selection takes place, the idea has always been there. Here in the UK, the focus is now on great tits. Researchers have found out something very exciting about these little birds.
In the UK, great tits are evolving longer bills.
So what is a great tit? What do they look like? Where can you find them? I went to the RSPB UK headquarters in Sandy to find out about great tits from Chris Callow, wildlife expert.
A great tit is the largest member of the tit family that you can find in the UK. It's kind of a green and yellow bird with a black head and white cheeks and a black stripe down its breast and chest, which is wider in the male birds. And you can look for them pretty much anywhere in the UK. They're very common. I think they're the 8th most common garden visitor in the UK. Primarily a woodland bird, but they have adapted very well to gardens. And pretty much the only place in the country you can't find them is Orkney and Shetland.
But great tit beaks are getting longer. I spoke to Professor John Slate at the University of Sheffield about how this was discovered and what it might mean.
It's actually known that great tits in the UK have got longer bills than elsewhere, but this evidence suggested that they've evolved these longer bills relatively recently.
To make this discovery, researchers used a bottom-up approach, which meant that instead of comparing what a population looks like and finding the genes which code for that trait, they compared the genomes first. They used British and Dutch samples, about 1,000 birds in each. They were looking for signals of selection which would differ between the populations and found some differences in the genomes.
So we looked at what genes are in those regions, and we discovered that a lot of these genes affected the shape of faces and skulls in other vertebrates, including humans and in mice, and also of bill length in Darwin's finches, which of course are a well-known species for studying evolutionary work. We also showed that the great tits with the longer bills in a long-term study in Wytham Woods, just outside of Oxford, we showed that those great tits with longer bills tended to rear more chicks to fledging than the ones with the shorter bills.
In the wild, great tits will eat insects, seeds and nuts if they can get them. But what are they fed in gardens?
People in gardens will often feed them sunflower hearts is a very popular one. You'll get a lot of great tits if you feed those. Peanuts you can put out in a peanut feeder, and suet and fat balls they like as well.
These birds that have the longer beaks may be more able to extract these nuts and seeds from the bird feeders and feed and raise their chicks more successfully than those who can't.
We're somewhat cautious about that. It's not definitive proof. It fits with the idea. It certainly looks like the ones with the longer beaks use the bird feeders more often. It's a working hypothesis and something we'd like to explore more in future.
But what about other birds? Might they be evolving too?
So starlings, a lot of them are adapting to be able to cling to bird feeders. Also robins, I've seen doing that as well. Naturally they'd be foraging on the ground, but they are learning to feed from feeders. And I've seen blackbirds doing it as well, not quite as elegantly, but they are starting to do a bit of that as well.
There is some evidence that blackcaps, which migrate in Britain, have also evolved longer bill lengths, and people have suggested that may be an adaptation to bird feeders. Again, it's somewhat speculative, but there's no reason to think it would be restricted to great tits. Any birds which exploit garden feeders, if this is the mechanism, you might expect similar adaptation of longer bill length.
But for once, this might not be a bad effect we're having on our wildlife.
All species have to adapt to the environment that they're in. Man is obviously changing the environment massively and rapidly all over the world, and most species are adapting to that or attempting to adapt to it and evolve to it. And bird feeders are just one of those changes to the environment that we've made, and they're not necessarily a bad change from the perspective of birds.
So don't worry about the changes you're making on your local garden birds, and keep feeding because they might need it come winter.
You never know when a food shortage is going to occur in the wild, so it's a good source of food for them if they can't find their natural food. It's good supplementary feeding is what it is. They're never completely reliant on bird feeders, but it's a good top-up for them.
It's amazing to think that something most people consider a kind gesture is shaping an entire population and may even be affecting more species than we currently know.